In the winter of 1944, in a country house north of London, a man leans over a lathe and cuts a groove into a spinning acetate disc. He is recording a conversation happening one floor above him between two German generals who believe they are alone. He understands every word because German is his first language. He learned it as a boy in a country that later decided he was not fit to live in it and threw him out for being Jewish. Now he sits in a British basement, transcribing the private talk of the men who served the regime that expelled him. Over 5 years, this house and two others like it will secretly record 64,427 conversations. A handful of prisoners suspected the walls. Almost none of them acted as if they did. It became one of Britain's most valuable secret intelligence sources of the entire war. And it was a house. This is the story of what happened when the Allies stopped asking their prisoners questions and simply listened to them instead. It is a story about a specific American general the Germans are supposed to have feared above all others. And it ends with a twist that the movies have spent 50 years hiding from you, because the truth in the transcripts is stranger and quieter and far more human than the legend. The house was called Trent Park, a mansion in Cockfosters on the northern edge of London, and to the German generals who arrived there, it looked like a mistake in their favor. They were captured field marshals and corps commanders, and they were housed in what amounted to a country club. There was a garden to walk in, a library stocked with German books, a billiard table, brandy, even a British officer named Lord Aberfeldy who took them shopping in London and listened sympathetically to their complaints. The generals concluded that the British were naive and that the comfortable life was their due as gentlemen soldiers. They talked freely. That was the entire point. Lord Aberfeldy was a fiction, a welfare officer invented to keep them relaxed and talking. At least 12 of the rooms were wired. There were microphones in the wall plaster, in the light fittings, in the plant pots, hidden in the billiard table, buried in the benches out in the garden where two men might stroll to speak in confidence. Underneath it all was a basement the operators called the M room. M for mic'd. Down there, in shifts, sat the listeners, cutting the live conversations onto disc and typing them up. Many of them were German Jewish refugees, young men who had fled the Reich and now found themselves paid to eavesdrop on it in their mother tongue. 59 German generals passed through Trent Park. Across all three of the secret houses, nearly 10,000 prisoners were recorded, and the recordings filled more than 10,000 typed pages of transcript. And here is the thing the generals never grasped. The British did not need to interrogate them. Interrogation makes a prisoner guarded, a prisoner at ease, gossiping to a fellow officer over a game of billiards, gives you everything, and never feels the knife. If you want proof that it worked, it comes early, and it comes from a single overheard sentence. On the 22nd of March 1943, General Wilhelm Ritter von Thoma, captured in the desert, is talking to another captured general named Krewell. Von Thoma is puzzled. He had visited a secret weapons range before his capture and seen enormous rockets tested, and he cannot understand why London is not already a field of rubble. He says so, out loud, in a bugged room. In London, scientific intelligence officers like R.V. Jones read transcripts like this one, and it helped confirm what other sources were already hinting at. Reconnaissance aircraft photograph a stretch of the Baltic coast called Peenemünde, and on the night of the 17th of August, 1943, the Royal Air Force sends nearly 600 bombers to flatten it. One overheard conversation, added to the rest of the picture, helped set back Hitler's rocket program by months. The microphones were not a curiosity. They changed the war. So now the question this video was built to answer. Of all the enemy commanders these generals might have discussed in their unguarded hours, there is one American whose name looms over the whole mythology of the war: George S. Patton. The 1970 film shows a German headquarters obsessed with him, a staff officer poring over Patton's biography, warning that this is the most dangerous man the Allies possess. The writer Ladislas Farago called Patton the enemy's most dangerous adversary in the field. So what did Hitler's generals, relaxed and unguarded and secretly recorded, actually say about the man the Germans supposedly feared most? You are about to find out, and the answer is not what the movie promised. Because when the historian Harry Yeide went looking for Patton, in the actual German records, he found something no one had prepared him for. He found almost nothing. Start with the files the Germans kept while the war was still on. German army intelligence in the West, the branch called Fremde Heere West, was responsible for tracking Allied commanders. The first time Patton appears in their records at all is the middle of May 1943, and by then he had already left the command they credited him with. A month later, they produced their considered assessment of him, and it reads, in full, like this: an energetic and responsibility-loving command personality. That is the whole verdict. One bland line from a personnel file. When German intelligence was not tracking Patton, they were not tracking him at all. In February of 1944, a German Air Force Staff College produced a study profiling the senior Allied commanders in Britain. It covered Montgomery. It covered Bradley. Patton, the one man the legend says they feared above all others, is not in it. They left him out. The files are not full of dread. They are nearly empty. But there is a reason Patton's name mattered to the Germans in 1944, and it has nothing to do with anything Patton did. After the slapping scandals in Sicily, Patton was in disgrace, sidelined, an officer without a real command. So Allied deception planners handed him a fake one. It was called the First United States Army Group, FUSAG, and it did not exist. On paper, and only on paper, it was a vast force massing in southeast England, poised to cross the Channel at its narrowest point and strike at the Pas de Calais. There were inflatable tanks and plywood landing craft, and phantom radio traffic chattering to no one. And at its head, to make the threat credible, the Allies installed the one American general whose reputation for aggression the Germans would instinctively respect. The disgraced unemployed Patton was made the figurehead of an army of ghosts, and the Germans believed it. The head of Fremde Heere West, Colonel Alexis von Röhne, certified the fiction. By the first days of June 1944, German intelligence carried something like 89 Allied divisions in Britain, when the true number was closer to 45. The difference was made of rubber and radio signals. Then came the 6th of June, and the landings in Normandy. And here the deception did its real work. On the 9th of June, a Spanish double agent the Germans trusted completely, codenamed Garbo, sent a long, urgent message to Berlin. Normandy, he warned, was a feint. The main blow was still coming at Calais from Patton's army group. The message reached Hitler. Reinforcements already moving toward Normandy were turned around. The German 15th Army, 19 divisions of it, stood guard over the beaches at the Pas de Calais and waited for an invasion that was never coming. They waited there for the better part of 7 weeks, while the real battle was decided 150 miles to the west without them. A phantom army, fronted by a general the German files barely mentioned, pinned down 19 real divisions at the decisive moment of the war. Patton never fired a shot to do it. Honesty requires a caveat here, and it is Yeide's, and it is the whole point. The Germans did not fall for Calais because they feared Patton. They feared Calais first, for reasons of geography and their own assumptions, and the deception simply fed a belief they already held. Patton's name was a useful label stuck onto a threat the Germans had invented for themselves. He was not the key that unlocked their fear. He was the sticker on the box. Then, on the 1st of August, 1944, the real Patton finally took the field, with the real Third Army. and for 6 weeks he became exactly the commander the legend describes. The breakout at Avranches, the dash across France, the German soldiers retreating up roads they called the Jabo-Rennstrecke, the fighter-bomber racecourse, because Allied planes owned the sky so completely that daylight movement was suicide. Field Marshal von Kluge wrote to Hitler that against total enemy air superiority, there was no tactic left except to leave the battlefield. General Bayerlein, who watched his tank division destroyed, said that not even the great encirclements of 1940 and 1941 in Russia could match the Battle of Annihilation in France for its sheer scale. There is even the story of a captured German corporal near Cherbourg who asked, before what he assumed was his execution, to be shown the automatic artillery. Because American guns fired so fast he was convinced they must be belt-fed. This was the Patton the movie sold you. And it was real. It just lasted about 6 weeks. And it arrived after the German fear it was supposed to explain. Now the tune changes, and it changes the moment the shooting stops. In May of 1945, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the senior German soldier in the West, is captured and interviewed by the American Army newspaper Stars and Stripes. Asked about the Allied generals, he says of Patton, "He is your best." General Jodl, from the operations staff, calls him the American Guderian, a man who took big risks and won big successes. Guderian himself, the father of the Panzer Arm, says that from the standpoint of a tank specialist, he must congratulate Patton, because Patton acted exactly as Guderian would have acted in his place. Field Marshal Kesselring compares him to Rommel. General Blumentritt writes an entire essay praising Patton's initiative and his lightning action, and reaches for Napoleon to describe him. And Rommel, dead since October of 1944, had already written the only wartime tribute any senior German ever gave, calling the Third Army's campaign the most astonishing achievements in mobile warfare. Suddenly, in captivity, the man the files ignored is a genius. Suddenly everyone had always known. You should be suspicious of that. And the best historians are, because not every German said it, even after the war. General Hermann Balck, who actually fought Patton's army in Lorraine in the autumn of 1944, complained of the poor and timid leadership of the Americans on his front. General Roth, who faced Patton in Sicily, described his method as systematic, cautious, unwilling to attack until the artillery had done its work. Not terrifying, systematic. And when Yeide added up the German verdict by the standards of the German panzer generals themselves, he concluded that Patton rated as merely above average. So which is it? The genius the field marshals described after the war, or the careful, above-average commander the wartime files and the Lorraine fighters describe? The answer is that the after-the-war praise was not free, and it was not entirely honest. When Germany's defeated generals sat in Allied captivity, many of them went to work writing military studies for the United States Army, for pay, explaining how the war had been fought. It was a livelihood, and then it became something more. Because within a few years, West Germany was rearming, joining NATO, and its old generals were becoming valued consultants to their former enemies. Praising the American commander who beat you cost nothing and bought goodwill. And underneath all of it ran the oldest comfort available to a defeated soldier. If you must lose, lose to the best. Calling Patton a genius made their own defeat honorable. The private words, recorded when no one was performing, tell a different story than the public words offered up once performing had become useful. Listen to Rundstedt's line one more time. "He is your best," it was said by a prisoner, to the newspaper of the army that had beaten him, at the moment he most needed his captors to think well of him. And that is the real reason the microphones matter, and why this series exists. There is a difference between what a man says when he thinks he is being heard and what he says when he is sure he is not. The interrogation room and the newspaper interview caught the German generals performing. The M room, The bugged billiard table, the wired garden bench, caught them off guard. And off guard, in those thousands of pages, they did not spend their time trembling at George Patton. They talked about their own guilt and the crimes they had seen, and above all, the two things that had actually destroyed them: the endless Allied air power that made movement impossible, and the ocean of men and machines and shells they could not hope to match. General von Choltitz, secretly recorded, said that they all shared the guilt, that he had misled his own soldiers, that he felt utterly ashamed. That is what a general says when he does not know the walls are listening. It is not a line about Patton. It is a confession. The men who ran the listening kept their secret for half a century. The British transcripts stayed classified for decades. The American mirror operation at a bugged facility outside Washington, the staff knew only as P.O. Box 1142, was ordered destroyed 6 days after the war ended. Burn all records. The men who had served there were sworn to silence and kept the oath into their 80s, until the government finally declassified the story in the 1990s, and a few surprise historians came knocking. So when you next see the movie version, the German staff officer bent over Patton's file, whispering that he is the most dangerous man the Allies have. Remember what the walls actually heard. During the war, when it counted, the Germans did not fear one American name. They feared the artillery and the airplanes and the sheer weight of a nation they could not outproduce. It was only afterward, when the fighting was over and the words were safe and the right answer had become convenient, that they finally chose a name to be beaten by. And the name they chose was Patton. This has been Nick's World War II archive, where the private talk of the men who fought the war is pulled straight from the record. The transcripts, the interrogations, the papers they never meant for us to read. There is another of these on your screen now. If you want the war told the way its own participants told it, when they thought no one was listening, subscribe.